Hello, this is Bryce Oliver's and Serene Hastings' instructional video on how to adjust the daylight on a Newberry injection molder. Only students that are currently in or have taken the PCE 331 course are allowed to change the daylight on the Newberry. First, there are safety requirements to go over when in the lab. You must be wearing a pair of safety glasses and have your engineering badge visible. There are also safety and warning signs posted all around and directly on the Newberry machine, which you have to pay attention to as well. The last safety precaution the user has to keep in mind is pinching from the opening and closing of the platens, also from tightening the bolts and catching fingers in the tension chain. If the barrel and heaters are on, then the user should be aware of the hot barrel and hot mold to avoid getting burned. Here are the tools you will be needing to adjust the daylight on the Newberry. You will be using a couple different wrenches and socket heads. Daylight is the clearance between two platens of a press in the open position. There is an optimum clamping force the press needs to exert on the mold to keep your mold shut during the injection phase. The platens can be adjusted to get the desired amount of clamp tonnage for your mold. This is an example of the ideal setting to achieve proper daylight. You want the mold to come together so that the locking mechanism has a little snap at the end, signifying it has been properly set. You can see the knuckles of the locking mechanism slow down and then give a little snap into the correct spot when the mold is shut. There are two ways to adjust the platens to achieve the proper daylight. One is to move the platens farther apart, the other is to move the platens closer together. But adjusting too far in either direction will result in improper clamping force. To adjust the platens, make sure the mold is in the open position. First, use the 3/4 socket head and the appropriate fitting wrench to loosen the bolts right next to the tie bars until the tie bar clamps drop. This is an example of when the tie bar clamps are too tight and when they have been loosened properly. Remember, there are 4 total bolts to loosen next to each of the tie bars. Once all the tie bar clamps have been loosened, put your current tools away and get the custom socket head and the larger wrench that it fits with. Be careful with this wrench because it only will rotate one direction on each side, so know which way you need it to turn before using it. Let's start by moving the platens farther apart. This means you will be rotating the tie bars counterclockwise. To adjust the platens, place the socket head and wrench on the chain drive gear, making sure the correct side of the wrench is being used to turn the gear counterclockwise. Only adjust a little at a time as to not over-adjust. If you over-adjust it, then the knuckles will be unable to lock out because the platens are too far apart. Retighten the bolts by the tie bars before checking to see the daylight. Here is what having the platens too far apart looks like. Notice how that small snap in the knuckles is not there when the mold is supposed to be fully shut. Now to move the platens closer together, the chain drive gear needs to rotate clockwise. Unscrew the tie bar bolts again so the clamps are loose. Now again, make sure the wrench is oriented in the correct direction. Once you have rotated the gear enough, retighten the tie bar bolts. Here is what the locking mechanism looks like if the platens are too close together. Notice a small twitch that happens in the knuckles. Do not mistake this for the snapping into place when the platens are at their optimal position. This twitch is caused because the locking mechanism wants to fully lock out, but since the platens are too close, it is unable to. Here is another look at what you want to have happen when the daylight is set up properly. Thank you for watching our instructional video on how to adjust the daylight on the Newberry injection molding machine.